Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox 2:32 on the East Coast, 11:32 on the West Coast. I do want to get you to a developing story that we have been following as a Justice Department employee has been fired and charged with a felony after investigators say they identified him as the man seen in this video throwing a Subway sandwich at a federal officer. The footage obtained by our Fox 5 DC station shows the incident earlier this week during a confrontation in downtown Washington, D.C. Court documents allege the man is now former DOJ employee Sean Dunn and that he yelled profanities at a U.S. Customs and Border Protection agent before hurling that sandwich right at him and then, as you can see, taking off running. Attorney General Pam Bondi posted about this earlier on today here on social media, and I do want to pop that up for you. She said, "If you touch any law enforcement officer, we will come after you. I just learned that this defendant worked at the Department of Justice no longer. Not only is he fired, he has been charged with a felony. This is an example of the deep state we have been up against for 7 months as we work to refocus DOJ. You will not work in this administration while disrespecting our government and law enforcement." I do want to discuss all of this further as we get more and more details on the developing story. Nima Rahmani, a friend of the show, is the president of West Coast Trial Lawyers, and he's a former federal prosecutor. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Of course, Josh. Thanks for having me as always.
Of course. And first off, I did want to ask you overall about this situation in general, because we are talking about felony assault. How exactly does that differ from maybe simple assault? And does a sandwich meet the criteria of any of that?
Josh, you're spot on. This is not felony assault. Felony requires some sort of weapon, usually a deadly weapon, or substantial bodily injury. And throwing a Subway sandwich at someone may be assault, but it's simple assault. It's a misdemeanor under 111 United States Code. Again, it's something that's a wobbler for folks who practice criminal law, which means it can be charged as a misdemeanor or a felony. So I understand what Pam Bondi's doing. She's trying to protect federal law enforcement officers, but no judge in this country on either side of the political aisle, regardless of who appointed them, is going to move forward with a felony assault trial here. This will be a misdemeanor, and it will be for a magistrate, which is a lower judge in federal court.
And I did want to ask, if this does end up getting prosecuted as a felony assault, how do the penalties kind of differ when you're talking about a felony assault versus a simple assault?
The key difference between a misdemeanor and a felony is jail time. And a felony is punishable by more than a year in federal prison. A misdemeanor is a year or less. So I'm not necessarily saying that this is going to be a jail case at all. It might be a fine, might be a probation, but a felony does put you in that significant jail time, a year or more in prison.
When we're talking about a DOJ employee now, according to Pam Bondi, a former DOJ employee, does that change any of the legal aspects of the case and the situation as a whole?
It doesn't. Now, obviously, DOJ employees should be held to a higher standard, but we're really talking about an administrative issue. They are at-will employees, but they can be let go for misconduct or conduct unbecoming a public service. And they do have civil service protections, which means they have the right to notice and a hearing. But in this particular case, we've all seen the video. When he was caught, he admitted to throwing the Subway sandwich. Really, the only potential defense here is that it wasn't me. And I think that's going to be very difficult to prove. So I expect him to be out of a job and be looking for a new job in the private sector. But I don't expect Mr. Dunn to be any felony charges here. We're likely going to see some sort of plea or a dismissal by the judge that gets assigned this case.
And on that note here, can Dunn actually claim that his actions were maybe a form of political protest, expression, or does the physical nature here of the act limit that defense as you're talking about not necessarily a deadly weapon, but an object that was thrown at that officer?
Josh, you're on fire today. You're absolutely right. There's a difference between speech and conduct. So obviously political speech is protected under the First Amendment, but conduct is not. So conduct always crosses the line from protected First Amendment free speech activity to potential misconduct. So an assault is never protected. Him yelling fascist, maybe even yelling profanities, that can't be prosecuted. But it's really that sandwich throwing, that physical touching that crosses the line from protected activity to criminal conduct.
All right, Nima Rahmani, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here and discuss all of this further. Obviously, a story that is still developing, so I'm sure a lot more information and developments will happen in the coming days here. Anything else that I missed? Anything you want to add here before I let you go?
Well, Josh, this is something that we're probably going to see a lot more of. Obviously, in Washington, D.C., we're seeing federal law enforcement step in, National Guard, and obviously this is something that's a big deal for this administration. So expect to see a lot more conflict and potentially a lot more charges when you're dealing with federal officers in cities like Washington, D.C., and potentially elsewhere.
Nima Rahmani, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on Live Now. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Josh. Talk to you soon.